Oh, entrepreneurs, I have a treat for you. We all have great ideas, but too often we end up talking about it, but never really doing it. Well, I've got a doer sitting down with me today, and I'm quite sure you're going to enjoy her story. Let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk, meet our guest, and hear how a doer gets things done.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jollis.
Her name is Dr. Ingrid Murra. She was just named Business Week's top 7 women to watch and is the 48th Latin woman to raise $5 million on her way to revolutionizing the beauty and dental industry. She's a Harvard-trained orthodontist and the founder and CEO of the orthodontic startup Two Front. She is the epitome of an entrepreneur, and if you've toyed with the idea of creating something of your own, stick around. Welcome to the show, Ingrid.
Thank you so much for having me, Rob. Really excited to be here.
Oh, good. It's quite a story. As I sort of kind of was carving into the bio, things were jumping out at me. And one of them was having the courage and ability to raise those kind of funds. That's really important. So I kind of want to get there. We've got a lot of entrepreneurs and dreamers that are listening right now. And so I kind of want to climb into that side of it. Everybody's got a dream. I'm just curious, how did you arrive at this?
Yeah, it's a loaded question. So how did I arrive at the idea versus how did I go about funding? Where should we start?
It's great. Let's start with the idea.
Okay. So I'm an orthodontist by trade. I just, spent my whole life essentially trying to become an orthodontist. Starting when I was 8 years old, I went through my own, experience where I realized that orthodontics can really make a difference in a human's life. It can really increase your confidence, which is really like what you need to live your best life. So I spent the next 20 years of my life becoming an orthodontist, all the AP classes in high school, 4 years of college, doing pre-med, 4 years of dental school, 3 years of orthodontic residency. And when I finally arrived to residency, I realized, holy moly, the world of orthodontics is backwards. Here we are, orthodontists graduating with between $500,000 to $1 million in student debt, still using braces, even though when I was in residency, I learned I can treat most cases with Invisalign. So why are we still using braces? There's a bunch of reasons for it, which are primarily business reasons, cost, et cetera. But basically, I realized that there was a better way to do things. And I graduated in 2018. I moved to New York. I practiced for a little bit to sustain myself. And that's when I decided to raise from venture capitalists to pursue a better way of orthodontist practicing and patients delivering or receiving better care.
Well, let's unpack that for a second. So I get it. And by the way, I'm a kid that got braces when he was, 13 or 12. And then I'm not 13 or 12 anymore. And my teeth started to shift. So I jumped into the Invisalign probably 8 years ago. I don't know, something like that. And I had a lot of visits to this dentist. I got the first one where we did, the sizing and the computer work or whatever. But then I was kind of wondering, why am I keep coming in here? So I've kind of experienced that at both ends, the real, the brace face and then the Invisalign face. But you mentioned something, they're holding on to it. Are braces being held on to because people fear change, or do orthodontists make more money with the braces? What's the impetus there?
Yeah, so there's a few reasons for it, honestly. So most brick and mortar practices, orthodontists tend to be a little bit older in general. It's the younger orthodontists that are graduating that learn essentially how to straighten teeth with clear aligners. Invisalign is just a material, clear aligners, as opposed to braces, which is metal. And so it's these younger orthodontists that can really treat all typical braces cases with Invisalign. A lot of older orthodontists don't have that expertise. Some do, they take continuing education courses. But then the second big reason is that Invisalign is actually 10 times more expensive for an orthodontist than actually delivering braces, 10 times more. So it makes it a lot less profitable to run a business when the material is just so much more expensive.
Wow. And I would have thought it would be the opposite. I would have thought they're holding on to it. And I'm not a cynic, but so it's going to come out a little cynical, but a lot of times when I talk to entrepreneurs who have a way, the old way is being held on to because there's more profit in it. But you're saying it's actually kind of the opposite here, that the newer orthodontists they're actually looking at it cuts into their profit.
It cuts into their profit. Yeah, yeah. But the newer orthodontists, and the reason why I really started this company is these newer orthodontists are actually so in debt that a lot of them aren't starting practices anymore because they can't afford to take out another $500,000 for a brick and mortar location when general dentists, two big reasons. One, general dentists aren't referring as much because general dentists, their referral source for actually like building their business can actually treat a lot of their own cases with Invisalign in-house. So they're getting fewer referrals. And also there's mail order aligner companies out there that advertise, hey, straighten your teeth in the mail, 6 months or less. And basically a lot of consumers don't know why you need an orthodontist anymore. And this is very much not the industrial revolution. This is not like, hey, Invisalign came in, replaced the orthodontist, you can straighten your teeth in the mail. This is not AI moving your teeth. You still, even with plastic, even with the Invisalign, you need a specialist who knows how to move your teeth to actually move your teeth, which is why I realized, hey, we need a platform to connect orthodontists to patients and give them the high quality care that they're looking for.
That makes sense. All right, so let's back you up a little bit. What's impressive about you, and people can't see you. That's the difficult part of a podcast is you can't see my guest. But my guest is about 40 years younger than I am. Maybe 30. I won't be. But so you're new at this. You're young. And yet you appear unafraid. So let's talk about you as an entrepreneur. You can't be the first person to scratch your head and go, this is a process that needs to be looked at. So back me up. When did you first start thinking, I think there's a better way here? I hope I don't insult the professor, but I think there's a better way. What triggered you?
Yeah, it was when I started residency. I was at Harvard Dental for my orthodontic residency. And I was sitting there, I had just worked my whole life to get to this place. And it was the year that Smile Direct Club launched. And I was sitting there looking at these beautiful advertisements, seeing these advertisements say, hey, straighten your teeth in the mail, less than $100 a month. And I was like, oh my God, am I about to be replaced? And really, I'm sitting there learning orthodontics for the first time in my life. And then watching the market of people who want to straighten their teeth grow because of these beautiful marketing campaigns. And that was really when it hit me like, oh my God, this is not what I thought it was. This is not what I signed up for. I'm not in this to run, a typical brick and mortar practice. We got to get patients informed about what it takes to actually get high quality care. And so really, like, I went through like a 6-month period. I typically sleep like a bear. I've never woken up once in my life in the middle of like an 8-hour sleep. And it was the first time that really, I was waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning and I was like, what is happening? What am I going to do with my life for like a 6-month period? Couldn't sleep. And so that's really when it first started. I started taking classes at the business school next door, started listening to all the podcasts, reading all the books. And as someone once told me, which is some of the best advice that I ever got, is Google is your #1 employee. And that's really how I went about it. Everything is on the internet. It's the most beautiful thing in the world. I had no idea, how to build a deck or a business plan or where to start. So I started on Google, just like a lot of the rest of us.
Wow. The phrase somebody told me years ago was, if you can spell it, you can find it,
Yeah.
and that was that version of use Google.
Yeah.
So, and how long ago was this? So how long have you been from the, not being able to sleep like a bear to where we are right now? So, and I'm looking for the timeline because whenever I talk to an entrepreneur, and first I want to tell you something. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I mean that. I don't care where this idea goes. The fact that you have the courage to chase it down is more than enough for me. And you're looking at an entrepreneur. I'm 30 years now in my business, and I came from Xerox, but there's no turning back now. And I mean, in terms of, you're never going to be sleeping like you used to, because it's exciting. But
Yeah.
and a lot of times people say, and we just heard it in your story, well, how did you come up with this idea for this book or this idea or this practice? And usually it finds us. We don't find it. It chases
Yeah,
us down.
exactly right.
So as an entrepreneur, looking back now, 6-7 years actually from Sleepless to where we are, what do you wish you had known then that you know now?
Oof. No one knows what they're doing. Literally, there's no experts. Like, there are people who know about specific subsectors, but if I knew that, it would give me the confidence to, I think one thing as an entrepreneur, and maybe this is wrong, but so far, like, you have to know a little bit of everything. You can't really outsource anything. And I think taking things at their most fundamental concepts and simplifying it, whether it's running a financial statement, that was something that to me for the longest time was terrifying. And then I finally learned what really matters is cash in, cash out. That is literally what you've got to keep a pulse on. And like, don't worry about 5-year forecasting. Like, yes, we can do that, but like, what matters this month is cash in, cash out. And I think you can apply that same concept to everything else: how to build a product, how to grow a sales team. There's so much to it that you just need to start with the fundamentals and don't be scared.
Yeah. Don't let fear hold you back. You are, I don't mean to be condescending. You're wise beyond your years, because you said something that's going to upset 3/4 of this audience. And I 100% agree with you. I still to this day speak at some of the universities, and it's usually an entrepreneur class. And the students always have a question about sort of clients. And I say, well, when I started, I had a big financial client. They represented 80% of my business, and hand always goes up in the air. Professor Winkelstein told us that we should never have just one client. And that's the difference between reading it in a book and getting out there. Cash in, cash out. Clearly, I'm going to try and fix the mix. But if I have a big client that's ready to write a check, I'm going to satisfy that client and take the check. And that's the difference between, like I said, theorizing about it and living the life of an entrepreneur. So you've got that one right in terms of focus on that. If you can keep that going, all the other pieces will go in. And I'm 30 years. I business plan kind of. I know what I'm doing and I go after it, but it doesn't necessarily fit all the business books. And it's interesting hearing your story, because you're clearly a person that's out there and acting and not thinking about it. So good. I applaud it. Now, one other thing I'll throw in there, just a little different in terms of the pressure you're putting on yourself. The most important person in my business, other than me, has always been my accountant. And the first one I got was a bargain accountant. I didn't do that the second time. I mean, a real accountant. And I'm encouraging you, and this is my theory, you can disagree, is that in a sense, that accountant is part of your team. And so we Google it, we search it, we go with our instinct, but we survey, we look at what's going on out there, and we utilize those resources and manage those resources. So, that's just kind of the way I've handled it. What I don't know, I either find it online or I find a human being who's an expert at it, and I vet them out and I use them.
Yeah. No, that's kind of like exactly what what I've come to too. It's half data, half gut. And I tend to always find who are the smartest people in the room that know about this. Do all your own research, find the smartest people in the room, and then come to your own conclusion, because no one's going to have the same conclusion. Perfect. So that's where I go with half data, half gut. Yeah.
Good. And trust that gut. It's your idea. At the end of the
Yeah.
day, it's your idea. And that means you're going to get a few of them wrong. But I've never met an entrepreneur who got everything right. That's why you're creating this business. You're supposed to get knocked down a little bit. It's sort of like the Rocky movie. I remember as a kid, I always loved Rocky. And I loved one particular line in there in theory, which was he knew he was going to get knocked down. He knew he was going to get hit hard, but he also was convinced and knew he was not going to stay down. He was going to climb back up and keep getting up. And at the end of the day, that's what separates him. But to try and avoid getting knocked down, I don't know how you do that and really chase a dream down at the same time.
No, yeah, it's impossible. Like, I think if you're to ask me again, like, what are other things that I wish I knew? It's that failure is like absolutely inevitable, and you should embrace it. You should welcome it, because the more failures you have, the closer you are to getting a win. And so you should try to get them as quickly as possible. Get through the failures and thank them for coming into your life so easily, so that you can get to the wins. Because yeah, we actually went through 3 different business models from 2019 until now, 3 fully separate executed business models. And this is how we arrived on this way of doing things. And we would have never known if it wasn't going through the first 2 and fully failing.
Yeah. If you think, if you've ever had, well, a bad teacher, not sure how many bosses you've had up to this point, but it's interesting that you learn far more from a bad boss or a bad teacher than you will from a good teacher or a good boss. They're good for a reason. A lot of their behaviors are seamless. They're effortless. They're putting effort behind it, but you can't catch it. But when you get damaged by a manager or insulted or just feel the pain of a bad teacher, it registers and it lodges that lesson in there. It says, I'm not doing that. I'll never do that to another individual. And that's why I'm agreeing with you in terms of your failures, unfortunately, are very obvious and easy lessons. But you can't, there is no, I run a business and my goal is never to fail. Maybe we should write a book, Fail Fast.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure it exists, but that's exactly right. And it's, you hear it. I feel like there's so many like Instagram posts of just like how to live your life and just like quotes that you read and you kind of ignore. And I was just talking to my sister about this. They don't register until they really register, until you really kind of like take them in and you're like, oh, this is what that meant. Yes, failing fast is one of the most important things in entrepreneurship. And it's something that we talk about with our team every single day. If this sales effort didn't work, great, no big deal. What works next? Let's not get disappointed about anything. Let's stay positive. And I think that's another thing, just staying absolutely positive the whole time. Positive and mission driven, because every single day is hard. And if you know what you're working towards and you're staying positive and you don't let failure affect you, you're going to get to where you want to go.
I agree. Yeah. Well, let me ask you, if you weren't doing this, what else would you be doing?
Oh man. Probably figuring out what Elon Musk wants to do next and just asking him what I can do to help him.
Right. Answer like a true entrepreneur. You basically say, find the greatest entrepreneur on the planet and learn. Yeah.
Literally. Like, where do you want to fly to next? What do you want to solve? What world problem? Like, how do we end world hunger? Like, whatever it is, like, I'm there.
That's great. Okay. How about, give me maybe, because you're a professional, and I think you've already nicked it. I already learned one myth, at least in my mind, which was that the Invisalign is actually a more expensive process for the orthodontist than the conventional. Give me one more myth about your profession or your field that you wanted to that you could debunk.
Yeah. So the biggest thing that I want to debunk is that you don't need an orthodontist to straighten your teeth. There's one of the biggest lessons for me, one of the biggest learnings is that beautiful marketing is just that, beautiful marketing. Not going to name drop companies out there, but beautiful marketing can really trick the mind. It can really, there's a lot of examples of this in the healthcare space like, don't go to a doctor for this, like, we'll send you this pill in the mail. There's a lot of, kind of like venture capital dollars gone wrong. And when it comes to straightening your teeth, just because you're using plastic instead of metal doesn't mean that someone with an expertise in what's called biomechanics. Biomechanics is when an orthodontist spends 3 years of their lives, literally 5,500 hours, learning how to move teeth healthily, efficiently, quickly. Because obviously, if you can be in treatment for 3 months instead of 12 months, you'd rather be in treatment for 3 months, right? As a patient. If you can make sure your teeth are healthy when you're moving them and your roots aren't shortening, you're going to do that, right? Like, you want the best, healthiest treatment. You need to see an orthodontist. We're all going to live hundreds, over, hopefully 100 years.
Okay. You're working on another idea there? Okay.
We're going to live a long time. I fully believe it. I'm all with Sinclair, Dr. Sinclair. Your teeth you don't want to be wearing dentures, in 50 years. Like, you really want to keep your teeth for so many reasons, for function, for happiness. And moving your teeth is a critical, as I'm sure you can imagine, moving your teeth in your bones, it's a big deal. It's like, how do we actually do this? You want an expert for this. You want someone that's actually going to get you healthy, stable results so that you don't have any bite problems, so that you don't develop any TMJ problems. And so no matter what, if there's one takeaway from this, I really hope people seek out their orthodontist, to actually straighten their teeth, because it's not worth it to have a bite problem and not be able to bite on your back teeth, or to only chew on your front teeth because, you went to someone who didn't know how to move your bite, or you start to get chronic headaches because now your TMJ is out of socket. And to fix that damage is really hard. So that's the biggest thing that I'd love to debunk here.
And I'm glad you did. Remember, I'm a veteran of your profession. I've been straightened twice. And which I think is probably a very interesting market. I didn't do anything wrong. I just got older, and I was told my jaw or my bone or whatever was kind of shrinking. I look at my sister. I look at most people, let's say over the age of 50, and that bottom row is getting crowded, and teeth are beginning to flip and turn, and these are people who had their teeth straightened. So, we all have to deal with it. And I probably would have hung in there a little bit longer, but it was actually starting to cut the inside of my lip because it was turning and pressing. And so, it's interesting. Also, from a sales perspective, and you don't know me very well, but I'm more of a sales trainer. I'm not more of, that's what I spend my life lecturing on and speaking on, writing about. And we see this all the time. We see all the time, we see somebody's got a better, cheaper way of doing whatever. You know what? Your finances. What do you need a broker for? Pay them a commission? Why, you could do this on their own. But grab a Money Magazine. There's two types of people with Money Magazine that are using that as to invest for their future. Them that's been down and them that's going down. You don't want to do that. And so, it kind of comes back to what you were saying, which is you're going to get what you pay for. Yes, you're going to save money by not going to an orthodontist. And look, something came in the mail. How lovely. But the conditions you were just describing, the things that can happen, by the time we get this straightened out, we'll pay 2 times more than we would have if we went to an orthodontist. And that's the cruel lesson of you get what you pay for. And I tell you, sadly, and I'm a candidate, I'm making this up, but it tends to last like 2.5 years. And then we come crawling back somewhere and go, well, that looks like I could get away with it. I can get that basement done. No, you can't. You're really, it's almost impossible. Do you remember years ago, there was an airline, what was called Value Jet?
Mm-hmm.
You ever hear of them?
No, but it sounds familiar.
Yeah. Well, they're not around anymore because when one of the Value Jets went down in the Everglades in Florida, and they realized as they sort of looked at the catastrophe, this is an airline that's charging less than everybody else, but their pilots are not as trained. Their aircrafts are older. They have more malfunctions than all the other major airlines combined. I'm not going for value brain surgeon, and I'm not going for value jet. I want a good plane with a good pilot. I'm getting a little wordy on this, but I just don't want people to lose what you just said, which is your profession is the poster child of be cautious, don't get caught in the marketing ideas and scams. And so I'm glad you're bringing that up. All right.
Yeah,
Yeah, go
100%.
ahead.
No, 100%. I mean, that's, I'll tell you, I just moved into my first house. I'm so excited. And my partner and I, we were like, why are we going to pay for like someone to help us redo our backyard? It was all concrete. We were like, we want grass. We hired someone who, was super cheap. He was like, yeah, it's going to be, a couple $1,000s, remove the concrete, put in the grass. It was so much more than a couple $1,000s. And it was just a very clear example, life lessons, some things you just shouldn't skimp on.
Right.
This is obviously way more. This is your healthcare and your teeth. And so, yeah, it's a huge life lesson. Like, trust the people who are specialists in these things.
Yeah. No, and again, when I talk about finances, I'm talking about people who have worked their entire life, their children's education, their future, their retirement, everything is being balanced on that. And instinctively, it's a case of what I call instinct versus logic. The instinct is, I'll Google it. I can figure this out. Why do I want to part with X percentage of my portfolio? And it is a losing proposition. And imagine the ramifications of that. But I caution you, now that you've gotten reminded on your backyard, remember the Jollis theory. About 2.5 years, you're going to be ripe for it again. So be careful. Be on the lookout.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
It's funny. I told you I made up the number, but it kind of fits. It's not the first year, a little bit after the second year, and then you just get crazy again. You figure I'm ready to roll the dice again. No good. All right. How about we know you're a Musk fan, but how about one or two people who've been the most influential to you?
Oh, one or two people. I mean, it's definitely like I've got to say, Elon Musk is number one. Just like I read a quote about how like someone interviewed him on how he landed on SpaceX, and literally he was like, I picked up a book and I read about Mars and I became interested and I decided to start a company, to get to Mars. And really it was just a perfect example of just like, you just do it. Like, it's action over everything and belief in yourself. You don't have to like get your PhD in Mars. You can just do it. And so I think he's been just so instrumental in just like my motivation in life that like you can really do anything you want. Second is Barack Obama. He's just so endlessly, I think just such a good leader, and just is so endlessly positive and such a great face for people who look up to him. And sometimes I think whenever I get into situations where I wonder like, how should I handle this, I think like, how would Obama handle this?
Yeah. Did you ever read his book, The Audacity of Hope?
No, I've got to read it. Is it good?
Yeah, it still holds up. It's a very interesting book, written by a really interesting man. And as you said, you can like his politics, don't like his politics. We're not getting political, but no one can dispute the fact that he was and is an amazing leader.
100%.
I remember when he was running, one of the pieces against him was he just speaks well. That's, they had to finally concede the fact that we get it. Nobody can speak like that. But he's very creative. For me, it's a guy named Brian Tracy, and Brian is, you might not, he's MySpace, but he was the first sales trainer and writer and author who put a process behind what I was trying to do. I'm a believer that, and it doesn't always fit, but that in a lot of things that we're doing, particularly as trainers or teachers, we want to create a repeatable, predictable process. In fact, There is one for Invisalign, and there's many in your profession. There really wasn't as many in the sales profession. Is more of just go out and, and go get the world by the tail. That's not really a process. That's an inspiration. And so I like the fact that that was the first person who spoke to me and said, no, wait a minute, we can process trust. We can process some of these moves. You stylize it, but so I'm just swapping heroes with you, but that's one for me.
I love it. I'll have to write down his name after the show because I always love researching people who inspire other people.
Yeah. And
you could definitely use some help with sales.
well, of course, you could talk to me too, but Brian is my hero, and he's on YouTube. He's got his books out, but he's on the West Coast too. I think he's in San Diego. So,
awesome.
Yeah, but look him up, and you'll see he sells millions of books. He's very successful. Well, this has been delightful. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and you know what? You're the perfect guest because it's interesting. We were able to merge in the orthodontic profession, but to me, as important or more important, the mind of an entrepreneur. That's you. Welcome to the club. I'm going to give you a little caution now. What I find, and mistakes I've made, what I find about very creative people and entrepreneurs is once they build it, they get bored with it. They lose interest in it a little bit. That's where sometimes the ideas begin to erode a little bit. So hang with it, see it through, and before you get distracted by, a shiny nickel in the corner. Musk has got the ability to pick up a book, read about Mars, and build a spacecraft. But most of us, the great entrepreneurs that I know, have people watching them to make sure they don't lose focus, because that's what creative geniuses, in a sense, do. They love the idea and the chase, and then they get bored with the implementation a little bit. I'm not saying that's you. I'm just saying I'm you of the future in male form, but I'm saying watch out for that one, and the world's your oyster, my friend.
Well, I super appreciate it. And I definitely know there's a lot of nickels out there. So thank you for the advice. I'll keep it in mind.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. And I'm grateful we had the opportunity to speak, Ingrid.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Good. Well, we'll do it again as well as we can next time. Until then, everybody, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.